the Sunday program, this kind of Alachua County. We're happy to see you all and think of you all that are here virtually. This evening, I want to talk about a subject that is not only familiar to everyone, but is their right. In the current political and social atmosphere that's going around, a lot of talk about rights. What's your right? You have a right to this, you have a right to that. Well, I want to tell you that you all have a right to the subject matter tonight. You all have a right to it. Subject matter is happiness. It's happiness. And the Vedic scriptures say, Nandamaya Vyasat, that the nature of the living being is that he's pleasure-seeking. Means he wants to be happy. He, she wants to be happy. And so you have a right to that. But you're being robbed of it, of your right, as long as you remain in this material world. This material world forcibly takes your rights away from you. Who would want to stay in such a place as that? Especially when that right is such a wonderful thing, happiness. So we're going to talk a little bit about happiness, comparing different types of happiness, so that you understand how to get the full expression of happiness and live your life like that. So we'll read a verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 21, that explains a little bit about the type of happiness that's available, the best type of happiness that's available. And then we'll go back and look at some reasons why we may not be experiencing that. So if I get Bhagavad Gita here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, text 21 in this 6th chapter, which is entitled Jnana Yoga, comes in the translation by Srila Prabhupada in the midst of two other verses, beginning with text 20, ending with text number 23. So text number 21 is what we want to focus on up there. I'll just read it, and you can follow along on the screen. Sukham ajantikam yattat Bhurigrayam atendriyam veti yatra no chaivayam stitas chalati tattvata. So I'll read the translation for all three verses. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. And this is the part of the verse that's particularly going to be talked about today. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Thus established, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, he is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Om Ajnana Timirandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki. So I want to just read the last two paragraphs of this purport. The best practice of yoga in this age is Krishna consciousness, which is not baffling. A Krishna conscious person is so happy in his occupation that he does not aspire for any other happiness. There are many impediments, especially in this age of hypocrisy, to practicing Hatha Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. But there is no such problem in executing Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. As long as the material body exists, one has to meet the demands of the body, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. But a person who is in pure Bhakti Yoga or in Krishna consciousness does not arouse the senses while meeting the demands of the body. Rather, he accepts the bare necessities of life, making the best use of a bad bargain, and enjoys transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. He is callous toward incidental occurrences such as accidents, disease, scarcity, and even death of a most dear relative. But he is always alert to execute his duties in Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. Accidents never deviate him from his duty. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2:14, Agama Payano Nityastam Satikshastra Bharata. He endures all such incidental occurrences because he knows that they come and go and do not affect his duties. In this way, he achieves the highest perfection in yoga practice. So today is a good day to focus on happiness because it's a very special day on the Vaishnava calendar. Today is Dussehra. Does everyone know what Dussehra is? Dussehra is the day that Lord Ram killed Ravana. And that's significant, especially for happiness, because who knows what the word or Ravana's name means? You might know what Ravana's name means? Yes, one who makes others cry. That's Ravana's name. That's his characteristic. That's his activities. That's his being. He exists to make others cry. And so when he is slayed by Lord Ram, then a major source of unhappiness, crying, is eliminated. So today is a very good day to discuss the subject matter of happiness. Actually, Ravana, he also wanted happiness. It's not that he didn't want happiness, but it's just the way he went about it, especially in his relationship with others. The first thing we need to know about happiness is that happiness is derived, as Prabhupada was describing in a purport, in Krishna consciousness. And Krishna consciousness means devotional service. And devotional service means unto Krishna. So the very first thing about happiness is that it involves somebody else. That somebody is the Supreme Lord Krishna. And ultimately that somebody else is all living entities. So we're very happy to see the person who was opposed to that 180 degrees, 100 degrees, 180 degrees opposed to the happiness of others and our own happiness through that. That person, Ravana, when he is killed, that's a happy day for all of us. Actually, I think here in New Ramanreti, on this day we used to have the effigy of Ravana, big tall effigy of Ravana. I know that 40 years ago, when we installed Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman at the Potomac Temple in the Washington, D.C. area, we had a festival that went along with it. And there was a play. And at the culmination of the play, everyone ran down the hill from where the play was being performed into an open area where we had a 10-foot tall Ravana built. And we burned him. We burned Ravana. The newspapers even covered it, you know. Said, in Potomac today, and then they showed Ravana burning. And so this is done quite extensively, at least in India, at least the parts I've been in. In Delhi, they have a big festival at the Ram Leela ground where they burn Ravana. And they also celebrate in Mathura. One year I was with the Gurukul boys from the Bhaktivedanta Swami Gurukul, and we went to see the burning of Ravana in Mathura. It's a big display with fireworks and everything, quite something. But why not celebrate? Because what we're getting is rid of a major source or an inspiration for those that want to remain unhappy in this world. So Ravana. Ravana was a gruesome fellow. He had 10 heads, all of them with some very frightening or intimidating look on his face. And those 10 heads represent something. They represent the attempt by the living being to be happy in this world. He had 10 heads. So he had a lot of facility to try to be happy by satisfying his senses at the direction of each individual head. And when Ram was fighting with him, Ram knew he had 10 heads, and he would cut one head off, one after another, during the battle. But what would happen when the head was cut off? Zoop! Another head came up to take its place. So many times in their fight, Ram cut off his heads, but they all came back. Zoop! Our acharyas give the understanding of this as meaning that just like our desires for material happiness, we may understand they're bad, and we may try to get rid of them, to cut off that head, to cut off that behavior. But material contamination is so deep that what happens? That head comes back. That material desire comes back. And so the battle was going on like this, and Ram was, in his Leela, wondering how to kill this person. How is it possible to kill this person? I'm cutting off his heads one after another, but he's not dying. Then he got the clue. You have to shoot him in his heart. And if you shoot him in his heart and destroy his heart, then that cause of happiness, unhappiness, and crying to others will be vanquished. So that's what Ram did. He fixed his arrow and he shot Ravana in his heart, and he was able to slay this demon that caused so much pain and misery to others. So Ravana, in this little history that we gave of Dashera, or sometimes it's called Ram Vijayotsava, the festival of Ram conquering Ravana. But the reason why I told this story is to point out a fallacy about life that's very prevalent. It's very prevalent. That fallacy is that more is better. It's almost like a little mantra. Materialists could repeat it. We don't want to repeat it. But more is better. If you have 10 heads, you have more heads, then the more you'll be able to enjoy. More is better. But that's a fallacy. It's not a given that more is better. Actually, to have that idea is the curse of material civilization, particularly now, where this idea that if you have more sense enjoyment, if you have more money, if you have more facility, whatever you have more of, you're better off. That's the idea that's driving society. That's driving a consumer world. Not long ago, I heard described the hundreds of millions of people in China as, consumer units. China has so many million consumer units, or U.S. has so many consumer units. People have been reduced to their ability to consume. And their ability to consume drives the engine of society, all for the illusory chasing of happiness. Everyone wants happiness, but it's not available in the materialistic life. But the point is, you haven't got enough. If you had more, then you'd be happy. More is better. It's a fallacy. And I have a couple of examples which point that out very clearly. First, there's a story from Hitopadesh about a worker, ordinary laborer, and his job used to be to pull the rope tied to a moat through a canal. Can you picture this? They have people on the side of a canal of water. They have ropes tied to the boat inside the moat. And people along the side of the bank walk, pulling. This way goods are transmitted. So anyway, this laborer had that job, and sometimes the bank of a river has stones and pebbles or whatever, maybe some thorns and everything. And so, despite the path being rough, that was his job. And he had to pull the boat along this canal. He was a pious man, and one day, by his pious credits, he got the audience of a demigod. And the demigod told him, I can give you anything you want. This is why people want to go to the heavenly planets or worship the devatas, because they can give us greater material facility. They can give us more so that we think it's better. So the demigod was telling this poor laborer that I can give you more. You just have to ask. Now, because that man, that laborer, was like a certain class of men that we may be or we may see, that man thought, well, if I can just get rid of the suffering on my feet, I'll be happy. So he said to the demigod, what I want from you are pillows that I can put on my feet so that when I pull the ropes to move this moat, I'll have something soft to walk on, not the hard rocks and pebbles. That's the more he wanted. Obviously, he wasn't the most intelligent person or didn't know his self-interest in the best way. But that's what he asked for, and that's what he got. So a lot of times when we are in this material world and we're thinking, I need more of something to make me happy, we also think like that. We think that if I could just reduce the suffering, reduce the hardship, then I'll be happy. And so we limit our conception of happiness or what we want based on something very foolish and temporary, like this laborer. So that's not the kind of happiness that we're searching out or that's available in Krishna consciousness. It's a more subtle, a more substantial experience, not just a relief from misery. So relief from misery won't bring us happy, no matter how much more of it we get. Second story. We tend to think in this material world that material possessions will make me happy. And if I have more material possessions, the more happy I'll be. So it makes sense then, if that's our logic, that if you were the most wealthy man in the world, you'd also be the most happy man in the world. Because you could get more of anything that you wanted and be satisfied in that way. Well, you'll be happy to know that there's a real, live, living person on this earth today who bought into this theory, still buys into it very completely, 100%. The Sultan of Brunei. You've heard of the Sultan of Brunei? It's a small little country on Malaysia? Indonesia. I think it's on it's a tip on one of the Indonesian islands. The Sultan of Brunei. This man is the wealthiest man in the world because of oil reserves that are under that little kingdom there. Now, as I said, more is better, so he's thinking more is better. So material possessions, the more material possessions you have, the more happy you'll be. So you know what he went out and did? This man, just like you and me, walking flesh and bones in this material world, not ancient history, not on some faraway heavenly planet, right here on earth. This man owns 5,000 automobiles. Which include over 600 Rolls Royces, 300 Ferraris, etc. Well, is he happy? That's a good question, because if he ever wants to be happy, his servants have a car in his driveway waiting, turned on, running 24 hours a day, so he can have any facility he wants at any time. Go for a ride. Sometimes it's described, sometimes at night he'll drive around, in his cars.
How old is he?
I don't know, but he's had 3 wives. So. So, 5,000 cars. He can get it. That number is not really relevant. He's the wealthiest man in the world. There could be 10,000, 20,000. There could be 1. But he's thinking more is better, and that's how he would achieve happiness. I mentioned he had 3 wives. Obviously, he wasn't happy or satisfied with 1, 2, 3. The man is living his dream, and that dream is a nightmare. Actually, the account I read said that some of the cars haven't been dealt with in so long that they are they're deteriorating. What is the word here? Let me see. Anyway, they're deteriorating. Can you imagine laying awake at night thinking, oh, that 575th Ferrari that I have is leaking oil. What am I going to do? This is illusion that's being portrayed right before our eyes. Of course, that's not all about the Sultan of Brunei. He has a palace also. And I want you to take a guess how many bathrooms are in that palace. Huh? Well, I think you got the idea that he has consumed with this idea of more is better. But actually, there are only 247 bathrooms. Obviously, he's not happy because more is better. But think about it a minute. This is an extreme example. It's a real example. I'm not making this up. But think about what it means about our attempts to be happy in this world. We also are contaminated by this same idea that more is better. More is better. But more is not better. And the unhappiness that these people experience before our eyes is proof of that. One final thing here, and it's about happiness. The United Nations, of all organizations, a prestigious organization like the United Nations, does an annual survey of the country that's the happiest in the world, the happiest country in the world. In the past, Bangladesh has been designated as the happiest country in the world. And that's probably because they're not consumed by this idea of more is better. But of late, the last 3 years running, Norway has been, Finland, excuse me. Finland is the happiest country in the world. But how do they measure that? They measure it according to the body, which we know from Bhagavad Gita is a place of misery. It's temporary in place of misery, but they measure it according to the body. They say that place where well-being is shown by income, freedom, trust, healthy life expectancy, social support, and generosity. They measure, those are the indices by which they measure where's the happiest in the world. It doesn't mention there whether that's cold or warm outside. Because Finland's pretty cold in the wintertime. And most people wouldn't want to be in Finland in the wintertime. They'd rather be in Florida. So these are examples to show you that happiness just isn't available in this material world, no matter what you do or how you plan. And this fallacy of thinking more is better is a curse. If we look, for instance, to the Vedic literatures, we see that the same idea existed in Bali Maharaj's mind. He was approached by Vamandev for charity. And Vamandev asked him for 3 paces of land. And the 3 paces were to be measured by his own stature. He's a dwarf. So he was asking not just 3 paces, but 3 short paces of land. And Bali Maharaj said, more is better. I can give you kingdoms, I can give you wives, I can give you planets. I'm the king of the universe. I can give you whatever you want. Why are you so foolish? Indeed, Bali Maharaj thought, this foolish young Brahmin doesn't know what his best interest is. Because he was thinking more is better. More is not better. And Vamandev explained it to Bali Maharaj. He said that if I'm not satisfied with the 3 paces of land I ask from you, I'll never be satisfied no matter how much I get. He directly challenged this fallacy that more is better and said, no, more is not better. Being satisfied with what you need is the way to find happiness. And that brings us back to the verse today. It's in the chapter of Jnana Yoga. And Prabhupada, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna the process of yoga, which is based on restraining the senses from the sense objects. Restraining the senses from the... That is the method by which one can approach becoming happy. Not trying to satisfy the senses. The senses are compared to fire. Whatever you throw into the fire consumes. It doesn't go out. Just as long as you throw fuel in there, it'll burn and consume. The senses are like that as well. As much as we try to give them gratification, they are never satisfied. And what's the point of trying to gratify them more and more? More is better. I didn't have enough. I wasn't expert enough at using my senses. Therefore, I wasn't happy. If I just learn how to use my senses better, gratify them more, I'll be happy. It's a fallacy. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. That's the science of yoga. To be satisfied with what comes naturally and to enjoy a happiness within. Now, in the verse, it describes, the verse in Bhagavad Gita describes the nature of happiness that is achieved in that manner, by restraint of the senses, meditation and service to the Supreme Lord. If you seek happiness that way, what will be the result? Well, it's described right here in Bhagavad Gita. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness. This word boundless, it's not in the Sanskrit. Prabhupada is explaining the experience. He's given us experiential translation here. Boundless transcendental happiness can be experienced when one practices yoga and seeks to achieve happiness in that way, not by this bogus philosophy of more is better. Now, what is boundless? What is an experience of boundless happiness? Have any of you in your practice of Krishna consciousness kind of hint of boundless? Well, I'm talking about it ourselves. It's a feeling, isn't it? It's a feeling in the heart. You can actually feel it. The word elated just gets it. I mean, it gives an idea that's uplifting, fulfilling, bursting. My heart was bursting with joy. These are expressions which we have for the experience, and it's, again, just a drop of ocean from the ocean of nectar, but it's an experience of a timeless happiness, a limitless happiness that one can achieve by the practice of yoga. Somebody was describing the Goswamis the other day. And we know the Goswamis were very austere. Very austere. Mukunda Maharaj one time, he said that Prabhupada told him that they were so sort of like feeble in terms of the body from their austere lifestyle, that they were sort of shaking. But they were very austere. But that austerity wasn't based on just giving up material things, but rather it was based on experiencing this boundless transcendental happiness. And therefore, as it's described in the purport, nothing else mattered. It didn't matter to them. They had no trouble giving up any simple, any insignificant material thing, material happiness. They knew the nature of material happiness as being illusory. They were also wealthy men, like the Sultan of Brunei. They could have had anything, but they gave it all up. Tvaktva purnamashesha mandalapati srenam tuchavat. Just like it was nothing, like you spit. They gave up this endeavor which so bewilders people that they have 5,000 cars in their garage. So this idea that more is better is very pervasive in our society. We have to guard ourselves against this, that we don't become contaminated by that. If you ask me, that's why they clamped down so much in Russia on the devotees in the early days. Because they knew that they had an idea that was different than being propagated by the government. They were free because they had knowledge. So we should also remain free and not become bound up in the illusory attraction of material nature, particularly this idea that the more I have, the better off I'll be, the more happy I'll be. It's just not true. So there's some reflections, questions, comments. So, yes.
Hare Krishna. So often Prabhupada speaks about the perfection of yoga, in other words, those who are situated on the transcendental platform. But of course, most of us aren't. So in this verse also we're hearing about a perfected devotee. So what about us? I'd like to, I read a purport this morning that was quite shocking to me.
Please share it with us.
And it said that Prabhupada said our duty is to enjoy material life. Yeah, it's in the, you can look it up if you like, it's in the 3rd canto, 21st chapter, 16th verse. We don't have to do that now, but it was stunning because we don't hear that. We never hear that. And what is the context for that? The context is that we should enjoy, if we have material desires, we should go through the process of enjoying material life, but in connection with the rules and regulations. And then we can actually gradually improve in our sadhana and Krishna consciousness. So I think it's a problem for many devotees. They don't, they hear about the perfection of devotional service, but they still have material desires. You want to comment on
I think it's a very good point that just as this idea that more is better is illusion, we might find that hard. Well, I need something. Is it more? Is it more than I need, or is it not more than I need? We can get bewildered thinking about that. Similarly, I think we can get bewildered about I have material desires. I'm sinful. Let me run away and hide, as opposed to a practical guide of how to step by step get out of illusion that's given by Srila Prabhupada. So I think that if we just take a section of it, material desires are bad, all material desires are bad, they're going to frustrate you, and don't replace it with something practical, then you're right, I think it's problematic. But that practical thing is given right from the very beginning, and that's chanting Hare Krishna. If we chant Hare Krishna, then step by step, we can follow the prescriptions to get out of this entanglement. And so Prabhupada gave us the key right at the very beginning by giving us the Maha Mantra. And if we take it, then we'll discover the steps manageable, and we'll be able to step by step get out of this material entanglement.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you, Sesha. Wonderful class. I was thinking a little bit of a different angle. Maybe like when Ram killed Ravana, he had realized he had to shoot him in the heart to really destroy him. And I was thinking the same thing with us, like to really change, we have to change the heart. If you don't really change your heart, you're not going to get to the source.
Yes, thank you. Very good observation.
Thank you for the class. I was also thinking that there's the saying that austerities are the wealth of the Brahmins, because that's real wealth, because it cuts that binding desires for material things. And I thought the example of Sanatana Goswami with his touchstone, here he had this touchstone, but it was in the trash because he did never use it. He didn't see it as, and when the man got that and went away, he realized he must have something greater than that. Why would he keep it in the trash? I better go back and see what it is that he has. And I think, like our service, devotional service and friendships with devotees are such a wealth, and give that actual bliss that we're looking for. And then you don't have to be struggling so much to try to find it in other places.
Right. Yeah, there's a story about the musk deer. The musk deer puts off this very pleasant scent, but he doesn't know where it's coming from. So he searches all around the forest, putting himself in different dangerous situations, trying to find the source of that musk. But it's right there with him the whole time. So again, Prabhupada's given us a Maha Mantra, as we were saying to Yadava Prabhu. He's also given us the Sangha, the association of devotees, the beautiful association with Sri Radhashyam Sundar, Krishna Balaram, Gauranitai. So many wonderful gifts we've been given if we just take them, not for granted. Sometimes we take for granted, but if we take them for what they really offer us, then it's a source of wealth and strength that can meet any calamity. It can meet any calamity. Prabhupada says in the purport we read today that you become so situated that you're never shaken even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. And so that's what wealth promises you, but you never get. Harikarturu.
Hare Krishna. Well, Krishna's very generous because he's made this world as a fantastic place. He's provided so many beautiful fruits and flowers and beautiful rainbows, so many nice things here that he obviously wants us to be happy if we live properly. So, he doesn't need the beautiful pomegranate or the pomegranates or the persimmons or the pears or the oranges. He doesn't need them, but he put them there for us so that we can enjoy. So he wants us to be happy. But he wants us to live naturally, because in that purport of that 3 steps of land, after the second step, in the purport, Prabhupada says how, therefore, in America we have so many farms where we're teaching people how to live simply, close to nature, and learn to be satisfied with the bare minimum. So that's what's missing. We don't have the farms. Hare Krishna. So we need to get some farms and grow some food and be happy. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yes.
I was thinking, are we supposed to feel sorry for the Sultan as devotees? Are we supposed to feel sorry for the Sultan as devotees? We know philosophically that
Well,
he can't gain, even if he had another, like you said, 20,000 cars, he still can't gain happiness, sort of like a hamster going around and around and around and around in a cage and never really gets anywhere. So there's an expression that says that money can't necessarily buy you happiness, but you can suffer and comfort, which is kind of an oxymoron. So,
Well, I think that the devotees, although it's an extreme example, I think the devotees do have pity or some feeling of compassion towards the Sultan of Brunei or any living entity here that's laboring under illusion. That's what we're here for, and if we do that, it gives us the key to all those wonderful things that devotees have been mentioning. So yes, last point.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. My question is, sometime when it comes to the sense gratification, it's not necessarily more, but like different. So, so for an example, tongue. We not necessarily want more, because you can't eat only that much. But after a while, you can't eat like khichdi every day. So you want different. So how do you relate that different concept with the more concept?
Well, different is just different is an illusion. And there's a story about a man who was married and he was hankering after a prostitute. And so the wife, in order to satisfy her husband, arranged for the man to meet with the prostitute. But the prostitute was very intelligent, and so what she did was she cooked something, I think, that he was used to eating, and served it to him. And he explained to him that, I'm obviously just grasping the details of the story here, but I think you can still get the idea, that she put it in different pots? Yeah, she put it in different pots, but the taste was the same in each pot. So you're thinking that it's different because the pot is different, but actually it's the same thing. So material life can also be like that. We hanker for difference, but actually the difference is superficial and it's actually the same thing that we're hankering after. And so, therefore, like in an ashram life, the attempt is not to cater to, like when we joined Krishna Consciousness Movement, 6 out of the 7 days in the week was austere prasadam. Then there was a Sunday feast. And there was some lesson there to sort of be satisfied and not be hankering for something newer. That's a whole other class, new. Spiritual life is new. But material life makes us think that it's new, but that's illusion. Okay, now which question? The bottom? Srila Prabhupada gives an example of Swayambhu Mani who enjoyed material happiness in Krishna consciousness. I think it's only out about Prabhu's point. How he enjoyed material happiness in Krishna consciousness. Of course, he wasn't a sense enjoyer, even though he may have had different facility. And that's the point, the mentality is different. Okay. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.